Welcome to the Ingram Micro Cloud monthly podcast. We are all Microsoft SureStep BDMs working across the Microsoft Cloud stack. My name is Martyn Hall, and I will allow my colleagues to introduce themselves now.
So thanks for having us, Martyn. My name is Michael Markey, or Mike Markey, Modern Workplace BDM, and I'll pass the baton on to my colleagues.
Hi, I'm Nicola Miller. I am also a Modern Workplace BDM for the SureStep program. Steve?
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Gray. I'm the Azure BDM for the SureStep program for Ingram Micro.
Nicola, can you tell us a bit more about SureStep?
Yeah, sure. So the SureStep program is a global program from Microsoft. The team consists of us four, so Steve Gray in Azure, Martyn Hall in Dynamics, and myself and Mike Markey in Modern Workplace. And we're on behalf of Ingram Micro. And essentially our role is to help enable partners by supporting them through your Microsoft journey. And we act in a parachute motion. So we drop in and we support with not only sales opportunities, but we can also help deliver training and enabling you to be more efficient and also to sell more.
Excellent. So for everyone listening, this podcast will cover off different topics each month. We will also include updates from the community calls, just to give you guys a little heads up of what's changed for each of the Microsoft clouds. This month, we will talk through incentives in a little detail. And that brings us on to the incentives topic. So first off, what's changed?
So in terms of the incentives, the rates kind of were in place as of up to the September 30th, and quite a few of them changed October 1st. So we had a little bit of change around Dynamics, that reduced slightly, but not to put any de-investment on it. Kind of spread across the entire stack now. So you've got some Customer Ad Accelerators in there. And then the Global Strategic Product Accelerators as well. They went as kind of a tier 1 and tier 2 motion now, which you kind of see the tier 2 growing from what was a 5% previously into a 10%. So are you wanting more detail on that one, or?
Well, yeah, I just thought we could talk a little bit around that actually, and you mentioned the tier 2 products. I mean, for selfishly, if I'm talking about Dynamics, Sales Pro, for instance, fits within that, and also any Powerapps licenses will fit within that. So both of those SKUs give you a 10% incentive.
Yeah, no, that's true. What I did think was interesting was the tier 1 aspect from a Modern Workplace standpoint. Includes the Microsoft 365 E3, E5, and Business Premium, and also your Dynamics Business Central, actually. What's not in there, if any kind of eagle-eyed or eagle-eared, if you like, if you're listening audio, will spot, is the Office 365 Business Premium, or what was now the Microsoft 365 Business Standard, isn't actually in there. So it got removed this time around.
I'm not surprised by that, though. I mean, in terms of we're looking at the hero SKUs from Microsoft, and I think, Business Premium is such a hero SKU for the SMBs. So I think that was kind of, we knew something like that would be coming.
Yeah, it's and then the Customer Ad Accelerators. Steve, you've had Azure, which is gone this year. It's gone as of this program.
Yes, so this year we are sticking with 4% build revenue as your core for everything that you bill. And if you happen to have an Azure reservation, it's 10% paid on your consumption, and that was on a monthly basis when it's consumed as opposed to the upfront cost. And then we'll talk a little bit about the co-op marketing in a moment, but there are some incentives that are eligible for that 60-40% split. However, the Azure reservation consumption and 10% is 100% paid as cash. But yes, losing the Customer Accelerator was something I wasn't expecting for this year, but it's happened now. So what we need to do is drive that consumption up so we can get that additional 4%, and then look to any customers we currently have and look at potentially creating a reservation for them for cost savings, but potentially there's more in terms of incentive rates that you can get back from there. And just to note, obviously, we're talking about the incentive rates that may not be eligible for all of you. You still do need to be a gold or silver membership with one of the cloud competencies with Microsoft. The most common ones will be your cloud platform, cloud productivity, your small mid-market cloud. Martyn, can't remember yours.
Cloud business applications and ERP.
Yeah, so you will need to have an active silver or gold membership available for that, and you must have enrolled in the incentives program. So if you are out there and you've got a silver or gold partnership and you're not currently claiming incentives, then get in touch with us. You'll see our details towards the end of the podcast, and you can get in touch with us that way, and we can guide you through getting those earnings started.
Definitely. Everyone wants to earn their money.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke about the core rates. Do you want to go through from a modern workplace and Dynamics perspective what the actual core rates are and if there's anything specifically changed? And then we can touch on in detail the actual product accelerators and which SKUs are within those 5 and 10%.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Dynamics piece. I mean, that's reduced by 1.25%. It's not a huge reduction, but it's still at 4.75% overall for core SKUs, which is pretty decent, to be fair. I mean, for me, where they've reduced that, it looks to me like they've reinvested what they would normally pay out towards the hero SKUs on Business Central, which gives you the 5%, and the Sales Pro that gives you 10%, and then investing into Powerapps for 10%, but also with the Customer Ad Accelerator, because that is bring someone in new to Dynamics with Microsoft, get 20% of the annual contract value. There's a qualifier for billing $1,000 a month, but that's relatively easy for a Dynamics opportunity. So overall, I don't see huge changes. In fact, it's still really attractive from a Dynamics point of view.
Absolutely, and I think the key focus as well, for just to mention, is normally Microsoft in previous years have had their updates in incentives every quarter. They don't normally commit to a full year of incentive programs, so having those product accelerators in place for a full year, especially in the Dynamics world where that sales cycle is a little bit longer, it'll give you a chance to be able to work towards those deals and still know that those accelerators and percentages that for new customer ads will be there when you get to that closing stage.
So, Nicola, do you want to tell us about the incentive rates from Modern Workplace perspective this time around?
Yeah, sure. So the core is still 4%, so there's no change with that. So in terms of when I always look at incentives, I always look at it as a kind of a building blocks as opposed to being that core 4%. In terms of one thing that is quite exciting is regards to the Customer Ad Accelerator. So this is actually doubled. So it's gone from 5% to 10%. And if you are taking somebody from maybe an open or a volume license and moving them over into CSP, they've not had CSP before, or they've not had it for a long time, but a really good break essentially. If they're billing more than $250 in a month, then you will get 10% back essentially for the first year that they are there. So I always think this is a really good one. And certainly when we're looking from a very topical subject with on-premise to cloud, I think this is always a one that we always tend to look at in terms of actually how can we move that adoption across. And certainly with the open licensing, the announcements that have come out of Microsoft with regards to the open licensing in terms of actually starting to bring some of those open licenses programs to a close. I think this is obviously very, as I say, very topical, I suppose, in that sense. In terms of the Global Strategic Product Accelerator, which is much easier for some people to say than others, the tier 1, so that 5%, you have it, I'd say, on Business Premium, E3 and E5 Microsoft 365. It as was really, and I think we're doing a lot of training around the Business Premium and understanding actually its own worth and the facets that move in around that, the EMS piece from Microsoft. I think a lot of people think of Microsoft in terms of the Defender days, don't actually realise that actually a leader in terms of security, certainly with endpoint, and I think we've got a lot of information that we deal with that. So it's kind of upskilling a lot of partners, and if you are interested in that training, then again, just reach out to myself or Mike, and we can help and assist you with that. The Global Pstn Calling and Conferencing Accelerator. So this is a really good one. So in terms of where we're all sitting today, we're all sitting somewhere in our own homes. So in terms of soft phones, in terms of what's going on globally, with regards to no one has really the on-premise phone systems, and soft phones are obviously coming more and more important to actually keeping businesses running. With regards to this, the 20%, that actually sticks with Teams, so Teams voice, so with or without calling plans. So I always think that's a really, really good accelerator in there. So moving that adoption across maybe from an on-premise to make sure they're actually quite agile with your customers and with your own telephony as well. And that also goes with the conferencing and the calling as well from the enterprise grades as well.
Cool. Well, guys, if anyone wants to reach out and get the full product addendum showing exactly which SKUs fall into which incentive buckets, please do reach out. We can share that with you so you know exactly what you're going to get on each SKU. And just to call out, there are assist programs available for Modern Workplace and Biz Apps and Azure. If you'd like those details, also get in touch with us for that. So that brings us on to our next sort of topic to talk about, and that's community call updates. This will be a recurring topic that we talk about each month, just giving some kind of key call outs of what we've heard or seen on the community calls from the previous month. So who would like to go through the cloud first?
I think I'll go. Well, me and Nicola, we can touch Modern Workplace first, can't we?
Well volunteered.
It's the most important cloud, surely.
Well, yeah, it's first and foremost at the front.
For you, yes.
But no, we had our community call, which occurred the other week. And yeah, there was quite a lot of changes in some aspect for name changes. We know how Microsoft love a good name change from time to time. And yeah, we just wanted to highlight some of those to you, but also what's on the roadmap for what's coming as well. Quite a few features that I certainly found that interested me, and then a couple of announcements as well. So with regards to, where do you want to start first? Should we go with the name changes? Get those
Let's always start with a name change, because we just love a good name change.
I've barely caught up from the last time with the office changes, so if you can do this and I'll start writing them down myself.
Steve, you've got to keep up.
Well, I know it'll give me 6 months and I'll learn these ones too.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the Ignite session, so a lot of, obviously we've had Ignite recently, and a lot of the announcements from today will be around this. So in terms of the name change, I think I'll go through the name change and then Mike can kind of drill down for each one, because he loves that kind of stuff. So Microsoft Threat Protection, now that is now changing to Microsoft 365 Defender. Azure Security Center, now that's going to be Azure Defender. Probably see a trend going on here. Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is now going to be Microsoft Defender of Office 365. And Azure Advanced Threat Protection is Microsoft Defender for Identity. What do we think about that?
Just said Defender and you're pretty much there then.
Basically, yeah.
Pretty much.
If you got a Defender in it, you're on course.
Is there a reason behind the name change, like moving it all to Defender? Are they building their own brand?
I think Microsoft are quite synonymous with Defender, aren't they? I mean, everyone kind of thinks of Microsoft security being a Defender back when we had like Vista and 7 and everything else. I don't know if it's a case of going back to, taking the ATP piece out and just putting a Defender in it. I suppose when you think of a Defender for football or something along those lines, it's like your last line of defense, essentially. I don't know. What do you think?
I was going to say, it does sound, I mean, to me, it sounds better. I'm just wondering if that resonates with end customers then as well, that if they start hearing Defender, they think more about security rather than hearing all these random sort of technical spiel about advanced threat protection, perhaps.
Yeah, I think Defender, with Vista and with XP, Defender was not something, it was always on a PC, but I don't think people used it as much. But it was Microsoft's standalone, as it were, protection for when people didn't have their own antivirus from a personal perspective. So I think people will remember the name more than anything. But I think in terms of Defender as a product now, it's obviously come a long way since then. And I think that people, once they get to understand that Defender and that word with back being synonymous with the security side of things, getting in touch obviously with you guys from the modern workplace perspective would be the first start to understand what each of those capabilities are and how it can help if you're not already utilizing some of those things, especially if you're using any third-party software. Opportunity to see how it can all be rolled into one package now. Obviously, yeah, we know Defender. We're not going to comment on what it was like back in the day, but yeah, we'll leave that there.
It's, if you think of it kind of like as a bubble, if you like Nicola was describing with the analogy of that last line of defense, you've got the users, the data, those identities all in the middle, kind of everything's circling around. So at one point you've got the Microsoft Defender, and then at the other side, Steve, you're probably more privy to this one, Azure Sentinel. Yep. And then kind of that prevention and protection of everything that's inside of that. So kind of looking at the Defender from both pieces, Microsoft 365 and Azure Defender, is that cross-domain protection now inside of that bubble. So
and this, sorry, mate, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, with regards to the Defender, to touch on kind of a couple of the key points inside of what Nicola was saying about those name changes. The Defender for Endpoint, kind of on those non-Windows platforms, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint on Android. You've got an iOS public preview coming as well. And then there's Threat and Vulnerability Management for Mac public preview, which is coming, which is quite nice to see. Within the cloud app security, one for you, Martyn, Power Automate integration with your Powerapps side of things. The Defender for Office, priority account protection and new simulations, which is coming. And then in the identity piece, new Azure Active Directory application proxy capabilities. There's conditional access enhancements and also popular SaaS apps, which are having a deep life cycle management integration. So yeah, there's some key changes coming, which looks exciting. And as I say, if anyone wants any information around them, we certainly can get a hold of that for you. So yeah, please reach out.
Yeah, I think with the prevalence of the remote working at the moment as well, I think making sure your cloud security is up to scratch is a key point for your customers. So yeah, get in touch.
It's one of the other things from Modern Workplace, one that's kind of been privy to us probably since March, I would say, is the kind of forbidden word of COVID, if you like. That's happened to us.
It's gone and said it.
Yeah.
You could go unprecedented times as well and just do a full house of it all.
Yeah. No, well, there was a study which was performed since like March and kind of looking at this new remote working kind of piece and what that looks like is kind of, how it's kind of been with regards to productivity patterns in Microsoft Teams. Okay. So over 6,000 information first line workers across 8 different countries were surveyed. And at Ignite, they're looking to start making that kind of start of a longer journey to evolve these productivity tools. So just want to get your thoughts on a couple of these. So, and especially your own opinions. So the pandemic apparently increased burnout at work in some countries more than others, which I can kind of agree. We were kind of, foot to the floor. Everyone was going at 100 miles an hour. I don't know if you guys were seeing that as well. I certainly was. Kind of 6 months in, there are more communication lines. There's fewer boundaries. I don't know. A lot of calls that I'm actually on now are seeing more video conferencing than not. The no commute may be hurting, not helping remote worker productivity. This is one. What do you guys think to that one? Do you prefer a commute into work, or do you prefer to roll out of bed onto the laptop?
I think it's a really interesting one because I think when this all first happened, it was like, oh, great, we can work from home and we haven't got to worry about in terms of when we get out of bed, we can just roll out of bed, make ourselves a cup of tea and then roll onto the laptop essentially. But the more I speak to partners now, I think it's kind of a bit of a Marmite kind of situation. Some people like the commute to work because they can kind of get their head into the game in terms of what they've got to do and everything else. In terms of now, I think it's a case of if you've got to get the kids to school or you've got stuff to do, or you just literally get out of bed the last minute you can and then kind of make yourself a cup of tea and then jump on a Teams call. So I think we've hit a lull somewhere along the line. Maybe changing rooms or how, like in your house, essentially might be a good start. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I like driving. I kind of gets my head straight when I'm driving into work or driving to see a partner. So I kind of miss that human interaction. I'm not going to lie, in terms of this is great, don't get me wrong, but actually seeing somebody and being able to shake someone's hand or just like have that kind of read the body language. And yeah, so I kind of miss the driving and the people aspect of it personally.
I think it's a bit of both, actually, because I love the fact that you can literally finish work at 5:30 or whatever, shut the laptop off, you're already home.
Yeah,
that's quite nice. But yeah, the commute into work and the commute home sometimes is quite useful, because if you commute in, for instance, you clear your head, you get yourself ready for the day. You are really focused. Yeah. And again, driving home, you've got that unwinding time where you can just leave everything from work at work, so that when you come home, you're not bringing it with you.
There's no separation at the moment.
No, it is blurred lines, isn't it?
Well, how many people are working from bedrooms at the moment? No one prepared themselves with home offices, for instance.
Or you've got really a whole office like me.
Yeah.
It's fortunate news for those who it might not be helping. Studies have shown that meditation can fight the burnout and stress during a workday. So I know myself, I've just started going to the gym, and that allowed me to get that released, and get out the house for a couple of hours a day, until obviously new updates through the government have just kind of aligned us, and they've shut again at my area for the interim. But yeah, it's showing that like there are ways around it, and self-help and well-being is there. So I'm seeing a lot of organizations start putting more resource into that, individual well-being, especially the reach out from home kind of thing. So
I think you also got to look at, a lot of places of work, should I say, done sort of like on a Friday, got yourself a beer and you could kind of have a bit of a Teams call in the evening, kind of. That seems to kind of gone by the wayside a little bit more, like quizzes and stuff along those lines. Everything's sort of like, it's kind of shifted back to normal, but it's not quite back to normal yet. But I think it will get there eventually, but it's sort of, I don't know. I think this is the new norm rather than actually what it used to be was like, oh, this is all brand new and shiny. And we did kind of done things that probably wouldn't do, but there's lots of blogs on this, lots of blogs for employees and well-being. So definitely, if you want something to talk to or have a look, or we can direct you with those blogs from Microsoft, then again, just reach out. You will have our details at the end of this. So, but yeah, it's very topical at the minute.
Yeah. And what is it from a modern workplace perspective, Nicola, do you find from the community call?
So in terms of one of the things that is the Teams update, so keeping on that Teams trail, essentially. Teams has moved at such a pace this year. We've up to 75 million active daily users. And we've been kind of keeping up with everything that what everyone wants, the demands of what everyone wants and needs. So some of the new announcements that have come out is we have a together mode. So in terms of pulling everyone in an auditorium, so you can reimagine everyone being in a bit of a different experience, as opposed to having, say, the backdrop. You can put us all together. So you kind of a bit of a kind of a feeling closer mode. So that's something that's been out not too long. One of the other things we've got coming, which will be coming later on this year, is customized layouts. So this allows you to be a bit more dynamic with the content that you're seeing behind. So you're not in that static picture, essentially. So that should be pretty. That's pretty cool and pretty interesting. So we'll keep you abreast of terms of when that's coming out. But one of the big things is breakout rooms. We're doing a lot of training at the minute. Everyone's been doing something to keep themselves busy with training or anything along those lines. But you can have up to 50 breakout rooms per team session. That can be run by your administrator. They look after that for you. So I think that's a really good one. Having 50 breakout rooms per meeting I think that really kind of keeps everything together, keeps that collaboration, and then you can pull everyone back in. But whilst they're in their breakout rooms, they can still use the facilities like whiteboarding. They can use the notes. You can kind of use that together mode and everything else that's there. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's something that a lot of our partners have been talking about as what they've wanted. How do you feel about that?
The breakout rooms, excuse me, I'm nearly choked. The breakout rooms, 100%. When COVID kind of kicked off in March, that was one thing that was really kind of, it was wanted by a lot of people, because they were like the classroom environment, for instance, generalized meetings where they were face to face, and the amount of breakouts that we've experienced as a team previously, we just couldn't do that, but now we can. And then the update around together mode, it actually went that little bit further than what I thought as well. So kind of like we've got our customized backdrops and in all of our things, wherever everyone is on the screen where you see us, it'll allow you to put yourselves on like picnic benches as well. And if you ever remember kind of collaborative workspaces around kind of a circular table, so you feel like you're in that meeting room as opposed to just the auditorium and things, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the breakout rooms bring it back to that. No, I think it's a superb update. I can't wait to use them.
I think there's also one thing in terms of stream. That's one thing we haven't touched on. So all videos will actually be saved into your OneDrive now, as opposed to being onto Stream. So, and I think that's quite a big announcement in that sense, because I think Stream's a bit of one of those ones you either love it or you hate it. But the fact that it saves directly into your OneDrive, I think that's really good. It's there. It's such a touch of a button. You haven't got to go around sort of searching for it either.
Yeah. It's because I know restriction of access. If you've not got Stream previously, you've not really been able to access the video content, whereas now if you're able to share it via OneDrive, then it becomes that little bit more accessible. I think one of the other capabilities, like we talk about meetings and like collaborative working and things a lot, but the first line workers, their team's experience. So one of the upcoming updates which are coming to Teams, which was announced a little while ago, was Walkie-Talkie Mode. I don't know if you guys heard of this at all, but if you've got Teams on your mobile, or in this case, if you're wearing kind of a head-mounted device, it's a push-to-talk feature, which is pretty cool. So that, for me personally, because I know when I was little, I always wanted those walkie-talkie sets. It was always a string cup, but I wanted that walkie-talkie to speak to my brother. And now I can do it through Teams potentially. Or Nicola, you'll be getting a lot of push-to-talk buttons from myself in the future. Maybe, I don't know. So yeah, that was one feature that really interested me. And then two huge announcements from Ignite. One was Microsoft Lighthouse, which I don't know if you guys heard of, which was super, super cool.
If anyone's familiar from the Azure perspective, obviously Azure Lighthouse, there'll be a similar thing to be able to manage all that from one pane of glass, as it were. But I'll let you carry on from your perspective.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Cheers. So yeah, with that kind of managing the settings across the multiple M365 customer tenants from that single location. Just a couple of requirements. As a partner, you need to have established delegate admin permissions and have those global admin permissions for each customer. And you need to be on Intune as well, just so you can enable these updates. The other piece was announcing antivirus management in Business Premium. So viewing those active threats, those device health, and identifying any actions that are required, because we know security at the moment is a huge piece. And again, for that one, you just need to be enrolled into Intune. But no, those two for me were huge from the announcements this year.
The Lighthouse one, you do actually have, it's in trial at the moment or in pilot, but you can actually request to be part of that. So if you are interested in that, I know I've had a couple of partners that have come to me about it. So I've kind of upskilled myself on it essentially in that point. But yeah, having that ability for one place to manage your multiple tenants just takes out a lot of work and a lot of to-ing and fro-in. So, but yeah, if you are interested in that, again, speak to us. We can send you the links in terms of if you do want to be on that kind of early release piece and be on the trial. So. And
I think that really wraps up from my point of view, from a modern workplace standpoint.
Sounds like huge changes on Modern Workplace in the last month.
Yeah, there was too much.
It's the level of Ignite. You come out of Inspire, then straight into Ignite. So so hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get through the rest of the year with no more name changes, because I think we've done 2 big ones this year.
So I'll kick off some business applications bit, because you mentioned name changes. So
it's an ongoing theme.
I'm not going to go into so much detail. I'm going to just headline a lot of this stuff. But the big sort of announcement that came from a community call was the project service automation. That's now been renamed to project operations. So that's actually been in preview now since June, I believe, late June, and it's now had its name change. So partners can expect to see that imminently. There's a few things that came out of the community call. The one that excited me quite a lot, and this ties into Modern Workplace quite closely, is the customer service application, for instance. That's now adding a first-party voice channel to it. That operates on the same platform as Teams does. So rather than having different providers and you'd have different offerings where you'd then stitch together data afterwards, it's all running within one application, and that to me is a truly omni-channel offering that no other provider can offer at the moment, which is fantastic. There's a few other bits that, for instance, Business Central is having its own event as well. So if you're currently working with Business Central or considering it in the future, I'd highly recommend registering for it. That comes on the 21st of October. So probably by the time you'll listen to it, it's imminent. But you'll be able to find those details online very easily. Some other things that came out that for other partners that might find useful, if we're talking about the Power Platform, for instance, Powerapps can now leverage the Azure API. It's never been able to do that in the past, but that actually makes it a much more powerful tool now as well. And I've expected to see a lot more MSPs actually getting on board with the Powerapps and creating their own IP around that, just so they can create their own unique offering to end customers. So if you've got someone who's really invested in their own IP anyway, the fact that they can now leverage Azure API puts them a step further ahead of everyone else as well. And there's also a session on migration assistance that was recorded on the 6th of October. So if you want to learn a bit more about migration assistance, I personally have a lot of resource that I can point you in the direction of. But if you want to see the session that was on the 6th of October, there is a recording for that up online as well that you can watch. So my updates, much smaller in comparison.
As will mine be. I covered the Azure name changes. There's none of that from me. So the Azure Partner Community Call, it's almost a kickoff for FY21. So what they did was they looked at where they wanted to grow, where the opportunity was for partners, and it was a lot more focused on the resources and tools available from a Microsoft perspective to help you grow as resellers from the Azure side of things. So there's a couple of little areas that they sort of focused down to, and I won't go into all the detail. Obviously, get in touch if you are interested in any of these bits. But we have the sort of SMB sales scenarios that customers may find themselves in, where you may not, as a reseller, see that as an opportunity from an Azure perspective, or it may be a pain point to your current customer and not sure how to get around it and what the solution is and what the actual workload within Azure is, because it's fairly confusing at times, and where it is that you should focus your attention. So what they've done now is they've created a sort of SMB sales scenario pitch deck. And what it is it's got all of those different workloads, the areas that you are, and behind each one of those solutions and areas and workloads, it's got the consumption available from creating a workload or a solution in that area. But then it's got a battle card with all the resources available to help you learn from a technical standpoint, from a sales enablement perspective, and from a marketing standpoint with pitch decks, etc., with full talk tracks for you to take to your customers. So that is it's a massive amount of work that they've put into that to be able to simplify the taking your solution to market and even creating your solution. Now, we've had a tool as part of our shoe step program called Solution Workspace, which, again, get in touch with. That will help you to see all of the resources available, but this is a little bit more defined specifically on its current individual workloads as opposed to Azure as a concept. Now, that is massive. Some of the battle cards, I've had a look at myself, and I'm really impressed. I'm going to steal some of their slides out of that for when I start presenting back to resellers on how we grow their business. The other side is that Microsoft went through is the Azure Assist program, which they've got in place for FY21. Now, every year they have an assist program of various tools that will help enable you as resellers. And there's three main ones I've pulled. There was a bigger list, but some of them are not focused on CSP. The three that I've pulled that are more focused towards CSP are proof of concept funding. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the proof of concept funding before, but they've upped the maximum amount this year from 3K to 5K. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get 5K of funding, and that's in dollars, by the way, for every opportunity. What they would do is, if you've got an opportunity that's predicted to be over $30,000 per annum, once it's all been spun up to full and maximum, there's an opportunity for you to request proof of concept funding, whereby Microsoft would take ownership of the subscription for the first 2 months, and they would implement some credit. That's normally done on a 1 to 10 basis. So if it was going to be 30K per annum, then they could request 3K worth of funding, which would be put into the subscription for the first 2 months, and then whichever comes first, the 3K running out, or the 2 months, then that would come back to be a CSP subscription. So Microsoft do take ownership of that, and that must be a new subscription. And just before anyone asks, in terms of the new Modern Commerce, it's not available on a Modern Commerce or an Azure plan as yet. It has to be done on a legacy CSP subscription. However, what we're doing is you could potentially set up an Azure CSP subscription for the customer, have the proof of concept running on there, and then either turn off all those workloads and rebuild them in your Azure plan, or if you don't have the Azure plan for that customer yet, you can then turn that one into an Azure plan subscription following the end of the proof of concept stage. Sounds complicated. It's not, but if you do want and have any opportunities of that size that you do or are interested in getting some proof of concept for funding for, get in touch with myself with the details at the end of this. And yes, a couple of others that I won't go through in as much detail as that one is. There are some Azure sales support. So what it is if you've got any issues where you need assistance in speaking to your customers around the reasons why they should move to the cloud, we have got a team called Demand Response from Microsoft that can get involved and to help you pitch or close that deal. Now, there are some exceptions as to, sort of metrics that you need to hit before you do it. If you have a current customer that's already billing over $3,500 in Azure, they don't qualify because they feel that they've already got enough support to be able to speak to that customer efficiently. But there is a $1,000 a month minimum deal size before you can ask for that. And again, that has to be submitted by Microsoft themselves, but you can come through us for that. And the final one that I just want to speak through is this year there's the option of getting some solution assessments available to you. So what they've done here is with solution assessments is they've give you the opportunity to go to your customers and get a full assessment of their workload. And it's split into 4 different areas: Windows Virtual Desktop, Azure Optimization, that's normally for already transacting, Azure Application Modernization, again, that's probably more for any applications or ISVs. But the main two would be Windows Virtual Desktops and the Data and Infrastructure Migration Assessment. Now, the ideal customer for this is, well, especially from the migration one, was how much would it be to migrate the work to the cloud? You may not be fully aware of how much it would cost to have that current infrastructure based in the cloud. And what you can do then is it would develop a full report within a period of 2 to sort of 6 weeks, where it would run a program on that current infrastructure and provide a full report of what that would then look like in the cloud. And they are available currently. There's not an actual minimum deal size for that one, but obviously it would have to be something big enough. They're not going to do it for one server to be upgraded to the cloud. So it was probably going to be a more a vast infrastructure that you couldn't quite work out what that would cost by yourself. That is me speaking in my northern tones as fast as I possibly can to get through all of that information as fast as I can.
Didn't have a lot.
I didn't when I timed it. But yeah, so yeah, if anyone's interested in finding out more about the solutions, the proof of concept, any of the things I've just spoke about at speed, then get in touch at the end, and yeah, I can talk to you quicker. No.
Sounds like next month I will have to bring even more, so you guys are going to have to go even quicker and have less to talk about. That brings us on to the end of the podcast, actually. So for everyone who's still listening and hasn't shut off after we've gone through an awful lot of detail, you are able to connect with us on LinkedIn. You'll find me by searching for my name, Martyn Hall. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, though, we have put up a slide that will give you a QR code that you'll be able to find any of us very easily. Nicola, how can they find you?
Again, you can find me in LinkedIn. However, it's Nicola Miller with an AR, not an ER, so I don't need to start requesting any randoms. So essentially, find me on LinkedIn. It's Business Development Manager for Modern Workplace in Ingram. You'll see me. It's a very nice, probably something looks like an optician's photo of mine, picture on there. So it looks like I've got a nice glasses one going on.
Mike, how can they find you?
So again, with LinkedIn, you've got the QR code there. It'd be Michael Markey. But yeah, you can call me Mike. You'd probably be able to find me using Mike Markey. I don't know the algorithms of how you'd search on LinkedIn, but look for a guy who stood on the pitch at Wembley. So that's where I am, with a friendly face, freshly shaved head as well. So yeah, that's how you can find me.
And Steve, how can they find you?
Exactly the same way on LinkedIn. Steve, I've made it complicated instead of the Steve in one way or the other. Steve, and Gray, it's with an E, and you'll find me as a business development manager for the Azure side in Ingram Micro.
And looking very dapper on there too, you are.
Perfect. Well, guys, just to let everyone know, we are looking for topics to cover off in future podcasts. If you have any questions or you'd like us to cover off a certain topic in future, please drop us a note and we will consider it for future podcasts. And with that, we are done. Thank you very much.
Thank you for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you all next month.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.